Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host and guide, Courtney Anderson. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to be part of the show today, and I am grateful for that. I'd want to encourage you to go to CourtneyAnderson.com and share any feedback, suggestions, ideas. Join in with the conversation. Here today we have one of the MYTH Warriors series shows. And of course, when we are MYTH Warriors, we are donning our proactive, offensive, and our reactive, defensive gear. Right? We are going into battle. What are we going into battle about? Well, we're going into battle. We are fighting for something, and we're fighting to find out what's a myth and what's not. If something is a myth, that means it's not true. It's not accurate. It's a fallacy, potentially. It's a lie. It's fabrication. It's falsehood. It's not true. It's just a myth. If something is a myth, then of course it is. Absolutely. Positively. Something that we're not going to want to use to make decisions. We're always focusing on surpassing our goals. It's difficult to surpass our goals when we have bad, inaccurate, false information that we're using to help us make decisions, right? So they have that cliche, garbage in, garbage out. The idea is if I have bad information, right? I'm trying to think, how much should I pay for this car? I'm interested in buying this car. I wonder what this car's worth. If I go and I ask somebody, hey, what do you think that car's worth? And they tell me a certain number. They say, hey, that car's worth $21,000. And it turns out that secretly, unbeknownst to me, hey, they work for that company that's selling the car. Of course they're going to tell me it's worth $21,000 because guess what the price is that the company's offering? $20,000. So they're going to give me inflated information because they have a personal reason to benefit off of me having inaccurate data. Garbage in means I'm not getting good information. If I went out and had a way to find out what do other people pay for this car, right? What's the price that other people pay for this around the U.S., around the region, to give me an idea about the value of that car, then I might find out it's actually only worth like $16,000. Garbage in means bad data. Garbage is going to lead to garbage out, bad outcomes, because I don't really know. I'm just sort of making a decision based on bad information. So the idea here is I need to then be in my life figuring out what's something I can base my decisions on potentially that's going to help me get good outcomes, right? It's more likely to be true or potentially true. And what's something that's the opposite? It's not true. It's a myth. I got to find out. Who knows? So in this specific show today, we're talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And it's something that if you've been part of any prior corporate education or training program that I've conducted, or any keynote speeches that talked about these types of aspects of our behavior, you've heard me discuss our episode topic today. And so our episode topic is, you are not a helpless victim. You are not a helpless victim. You are not a helpless victim. And so one of the reasons I said that if you've been part of some of my prior programs over the last 15 years, I've talked a lot about this idea of victim mentality, because it comes up often in management issues, human resources issues, actually legal issues. And definitely it's part of the recipe that can lead to really, really poor outcomes. And so we're always focused, of course, on surpassing our outcomes. We're focusing on practicing the joyful art of business, right? We want to get those good things that are potentially available in life. And so that's the whole orientation of everything I'm doing in my professional services and work. So we don't like to linger and spend a lot of time on, sort of a woe is me, oh, these horrible things have happened, without putting it in a context of how can we take that and interject it into our framework of solutions. That's the name of the show, Solutions. And as I said, this is near and dear to my heart. So I've given lots of different examples and lots of different settings and speeches and programs about what the negative outcomes can be, specifically regarding someone who thinks, believes, and acts as if they are a helpless victim. They are a permanent helpless victim. I'm going to do something a little unusual. Normally in our Myth Warriors, we talk, we share, and then at least sort of toward the end of the episode, we'll kind of try to see if I have any potential conclusion. Sometimes I actually don't have a conclusion. Sometimes that's one way or the other. Sometimes I'll say, here, it could be a myth, and here's why I think that, and it also might potentially not be a myth, and here's why I think that, and I'll just sort of leave it up to you after we've talked and you need to apply it to your own life. Many times I'll say, at the end toward the end of a discussion, hey, my conclusion is this is more likely than not a myth, and I'll tell you why I think that, or I would have preceded the conclusion with some of the reasons why and some of my thought process. In this episode, I'm going to cut right to my conclusion and then try to explain why. My conclusion is, you are not a helpless victim is true. It is accurate. It is not a myth. Not a myth. Not a myth. That's my conclusion and my assertion. My assertion is that this show topic is absolutely a credible piece of data and information for you to use in trying to construct the best possible outcomes for you to surpass your goals. So I'm arguing that you are not a helpless victim is accurate. You are not a helpless victim. Let's talk about why. One of the things, of course, I did in the show notes is link to dictionary definition of the word helpless. Let's see what Merriam-Webster tells me. Merriam-Webster dictionary says helpless means not protected, not able to defend yourself, unable to do something to make a situation, task, etc., better or easier, and not able to be controlled. All right, so helplessness. Something's going on, I can't control it. It's beyond my control. I'm a victim. I'm a victim of this thing. Maybe it's the economy, maybe it's higher ed, maybe it's local weather in my part of the world. Who knows? But whatever it is, beyond my control. Helplessness says that I'm unable to do something, anything, to make a situation, task, etc., better or easier. It's difficult to defend a position that there's literally nothing that can be done to make a situation, task, better or easier. I say that, and then if you sort of look into history, you'll see it's just rife with examples of somebody facing incredibly horrible odds, right? Maybe it's a war, maybe it's some sort of famine, maybe it's some sort of, a volcano, or who knows. And yet this whole narrative continues to come down generation after generation where somebody is facing really just awful odds. The odds are not good. It's looking bad, right? And instead of them just being helpless and giving up and saying, oh, I'm a helpless victim, this, whatever it is beyond my control, right? The war, the changing of the physical conditions in my part of the world. It's just nothing I can do. And yet we have these narratives where people do triumph in the face of that. Even in more modern history, we have narratives of somebody in a recent war or prisoner of war or concentration camp who, even though the situation was just horrible and the outcome was not a fantasy, they didn't survive being a prisoner of war. They didn't survive and go home after being held in a concentration camp. But during their time there, they still did things, something, to try to make it better. And sometimes they can be the smallest efforts, the smallest tokens of kindness, right? But it's another one of these examples that we can sort of pull and use to say, well, maybe that human spirit, maybe there's more to it than that. Maybe we just, even in the worst situation, we just don't quit. We don't give up. Now, it may be that physically somebody is literally imprisoned, but that doesn't mean their mind they've given up, and their hopes and their dreams. right? Their spirit. We look at even things like, the Diary of Anne Frank, someone in a very physically restraining environment in the middle of a catastrophic event in world history, just writing down things in a diary, a young person. And the person, of course, didn't survive into adulthood to be able to sort of tell her story and bring her diary out and share it. But that something as just simple as just a young girl's ideas and dreams, just the document survived and went on to have a huge impact. It can be literally anything. And what I'm arguing is that when you look at the definition of helpless, and you would try to say to me, "But I am helpless," I'm going to argue that no, you're not. Now, you may not have control over everything. You may not have control over much. You may only have control over what you can secret away in your diary or what you can carve into the wall of your prison. You may only have control of, defying some of the orders that you're given. But you're going to have something. You're not helpless. You may be in a very horrible situation. You may have outcomes that aren't ideal. But when you go to this mental framework where you make a determination, I am a helpless victim, it impacts every single choice that you make, and it impacts your outcomes in such a catastrophic way that my argument would be it's not accurate. I've not seen this happen. Now, of course, I've worked with people as a lawyer who have survived horrible things, abuse, neglect, people in foster care, people who are crime victims. I've worked with people as a volunteer in situations, people who are victims of horrible abuse and sexual crimes and assaults. This show is so important. I talk a lot about choice. And again, we've had many other shows, and we will continue to, in many other programs where I try to acknowledge as clearly as I can, within the constraints of time and the parameters of some of these programs, that yes, it's debatable how much free will we have. It's debatable how much impact we have. Everything is really debatable, right? Our existence is debatable in some ways. How many dimensions are there? And all these types of things. What happens in other parts of the universe? What happens to us as we transition from our physical bodies? All these things I don't have definitive answers. All I'm arguing is this. In the moment where someone says to me and argues, I'm a victim, I'm helpless, I'm a helpless victim. And they usually will do that. Let's say I'm going to work with people at a job, right, at a certain employer. So they start telling me about how horrible everything is, maybe in their industry, at large, maybe in the economy overall. And they'll start telling, it's the economy, it's our industry, it's horrible. Sometimes they'll start telling me when they're very angry, it's our management of this specific organization, or it's my specific supervisor, that I collectively or individually blame. They're the ones they've ruined it all. And they'll start to give me a laundry list of reasons why there's nothing that they can do. And their core issue then will be, look, who cares if I'm engaged in my job? Who cares if I'm motivated? Who cares if I'm providing exemplary teamwork or customer service? Who cares about any of it, right? The economy's horrible, this place is horrible, my job is horrible, my boss is horrible. What can I do? Okay. Big picture, oversimplified, here's my argument. Let's say option one is that it is absolutely positively accurate that I am a helpless victim. Let's say that I am a helpless victim, and that is true. I'm a helpless victim. What can I do? Look at the economy, look at my boss, look at the traffic, look at some of my family of origin, look at my neighbor, look at my dog, look at my girlfriend, look at my boyfriend, look at my child, look at all these things. Just awful, horrible. I'm a victim. I'm a victim that they do these things to me. My boss did this to me. My spouse did this to me. My dog did that to me. My cat did that to me. The traffic did that to me. All right. Even reflecting on this and trying to pull up some examples that aren't going to cause me to get emotionally overwhelmed. What happens is I tend to start thinking about, in real life, examples I've encountered of people who have this idea where they really truly believe they're a helpless victim. And they're wedded to this argument, and they believe it is accurate, and they're making all their decisions off of this. So I have worked with people who believe, again, at their job. Let's start with that. They believe, hey, I'm a helpless victim. There's nothing I can do. This place is horrible. My boss is horrible. the entire industry is horrible, the economy is horrible. There's just so much wrong with this. And then they'll say to me, look, because it's all horrible and I'm helpless, there's nothing I can do. I'm just helpless, right? We looked at our definition. I'm not protected. I can't defend myself. There's literally nothing I can do to make it easier or better. It's uncontrollable. It's just horrible. And I've had people who, at their jobs, right? So let's say I come in, I'm doing a corporate education program, on-site consulting, and I'm meeting people at your job. So the people are paid to be there. It's not like I'm at their house talking about their job, which would be something different, because often in our private lives we'll say things about something we experience in society at large that, we didn't express as explicitly, at work. So when you're at home, you talk about what happened at work often with your trusted most important people in your life, and you'll tell them what you really thought about what happened, right? That's normal. I'm talking about people who I'm meeting at work. They're literally at their job at that moment, and they'll stand there and tell me, this is a horrible place. I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say. I'm not going to listen to anything my manager has to say. The people here are idiots. I don't make enough money. These horrible things have happened to me. I've been stuck in this crappy, horrible job. They'll use really, really horrible language, much worse than crap, to describe what they think of it. And I'm standing there shocked for a couple of reasons. A, it's their job, and they're at the job. It's like I said, I didn't go to their house or meet them at a party, and then they start telling me some of these things, which would be somewhat maybe understandable, right? Like, they're not at their job, and they're going to sort of tell me what they really think. But they are at their job, in front of the people they work with, their managers, everything. Unbelievable. And then they'll sit there and tell me, see, what can I do? Nobody here gives me promotion. I haven't gotten a pay raise in so long, blah, blah, blah. This. I'm thinking, you're standing here telling everybody at the job, including the people who sign the paperwork to determine who gets a pay raise or promotion. You're telling them to their faces that it's horrible and that you think they're stupid and horrible and yucky and crappy and all of this. I just can't believe that someone would logically think that's going to give you a good outcome. You just told the people that they're horrible and idiots. So yes, I'm not surprised you didn't get a pay raise. I'm sure there are other issues at play with the economy, with your entire industry, things of that nature. But you didn't help the argument. You didn't do anything to make it better or easier. Your argument was, hey, I'm a helpless victim. There's nothing I can do, so I'm just going to tell everybody exactly what I think. And I see that a lot. Not a lot. I mean, not like I see it, 30% or some really high number, but I have seen enough of it over the past 14 years to know it's not something that happens, once in a billion events. It happens, more often than that, because I've seen it happen sporadically, going on site to locations. So it tells me a couple of things. One, there's a whole management business side of this, where why is someone who is that determined to be antagonistic and bluntly not an ally, not interested in improving the organization or the business, why are they still working there? That's the first question. Who allows this to happen? And that's going to be some sort of manager or supervisor has the power for them to still be there. Even if they're an owner, sometimes of a business, if you have a board of directors, you have shareholders, somebody's going to pull the trigger and say your behavior is just absolutely so negative, and it's destroying the morale of other people. It's worrisome to customers. It's got to stop. You can't do this and not have a bad outcome. And what the person's argument is, I'm a helpless victim, and so at this point I have nothing to lose. That's what they say. I'm a helpless victim, point one. So at this point, what can I do? There's nothing I can do to make it better or easier. This whole thing is a horrible disaster. It's going to continue to get worse. I'm angry about that. And I'm just going to go ahead and, since I have nothing to lose, tell everybody and do nothing to be part of the, quote, solution, because they don't believe a solution is possible. That's adults at work. I certainly have seen it as an attorney, and so many examples of this, where people begin to behave in ways, as a criminal lawyer, I'd have somebody who I help with something pretty minor. A misdemeanor is something that the punishment is up to a maximum a year in jail, and that's the max. So sometimes the punishment is, pay a fine. Something like you violated the speeding limit, you drove too fast, things of that nature. Well, then just, pay your fine and don't do it again. Assuming that you wanted to go ahead and plea, either no contest or guilty, so that you didn't want to go to trial. Because some of these are so small, sometimes it's not even cost effective or time effective. But instead, I'll have somebody who, had something minor happen, not a big deal. It was, taken care of. Often with those small cases, meaning the penalties are small. Lawyers, if you hire a lawyer, they'll work something out where, you didn't say you did it or didn't do it, and you agree that you're going to, pay a fine, take some classes, and not do that thing again for a certain amount of time, and then the courts will agree, and they'll go ahead and dismiss your case. Deferred adjudication or deferred prosecution. Very, very common. a way for us to all understand that, hey, everybody has days or times in their lives or things that happen that were not their best moment. There's no reason to ruin somebody's entire future with some sort of permanent record of something that wasn't that much of a serious issue to begin with. It wasn't a felony, and they were able to go ahead and comply with these issues and make sure it didn't happen again in a certain amount of time, and they took care of whatever else they needed to do, restitution, and, so now they have a clean slate, right? Specifically, though, the arrest might still be on their record if they have that, and then you can even go sometimes and get things sealed so that you don't have to disclose that. It depends on your jurisdiction. My argument is simply this. I'll meet people who they should have thought, oh, okay, something happened, not a big deal. It was a serious wake-up sign. I've gone ahead and changed my behavior, and now things won't happen again, and I'm going on my positive future. Instead, they get into this thing of believing I'm a helpless victim. And so they go out there and they think, I've got nothing to lose. So just like the person who at their job tells the people that they work with to their faces, and in writing often, right, with emails and letters and stuff, they'll go out into the world and think, well, I don't have anything to lose. I've already messed up. I'm just going to go out there right now, and I've met some other people, that are making really bad choices, so I'll just go out and commit more criminal acts. It doesn't make any logical sense because you're going to get really bad outcomes. But people's argument is, look, I've already messed up. I'm already a failure. I'm a helpless victim. I'm already a failure. All these horrible things happen, so I might as well just go ahead. I have nothing to lose. I'm just going to go ahead and just make more really poor choices. You see this with students. I don't see this too much with the level I teach at this point in graduate school programs, but you certainly see it every once in a while. But you definitely would see it at sort of lower levels of the education system, so primary education, secondary education, things of that nature, where somebody's belief is, I'm already a failure, I'm not smart, I'm not good enough, there's nothing I can do, I got one bad grade on one assignment, I just quit, I'll just quit school. Now, that may sound extreme, right? Where all of this sounds extreme to me. I go to my job and I tell people, I insult them. I absolutely refuse to do anything that would be beneficial to the organization, and I let everybody know that I feel like I have nothing to lose. Or I engage in criminal behavior because I claim I have nothing to lose and I've already failed. Or I go in my academic career and say, oh, one bad thing happened. Or maybe I had a class that was bad, or maybe I had a semester or a year, and I just say to myself, I'm helpless. I'm a helpless victim. There's nothing I can do to make it better or easier. I just quit, and I've got nothing to lose. So now I'm literally going to quit. Like I'm just going to drop out of school, or I'm going to drop out of this degree program. It was too hard. I'm not smart enough. Blah blah blah. By blah blah blah, I mean just more more negative manifestations of their perception of why they are unable, why they're a helpless victim. It could be at work. It could be in your personal life in terms of following criminal codes. It could be in school. It can be in relationships. You see that all the time. Somebody says, oh, I was married. It was horrible. I'm divorced, and now I'll never, ever, 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 ever marry anyone else ever again because it was so horrible. Well, that doesn't make sense. I can understand you saying you don't want to marry that same person again, right? Because you did that. It didn't go well. But you're not helpless that you never, ever could have a healthy, happy relationship. You just know you probably aren't going to have one with this person, so just don't marry them again. Why not go out and find somebody else who is in a place emotionally, psychologically, where they're able and willing to want to work with you and build a life together? Why on earth would you take these instances and say, well, I'm going to extrapolate this one instance of failure or bad choices or a bad thing happened and just apply it to everything and give up and say, I'm helpless. I'm helpless. I'm a victim. Okay. In the show notes, I reference this idea of learned helplessness. Now, we're going to do, and we have done, and I've got many other programs where we are just focusing on this idea. But the concept here is that when I sort of, and I don't mean it to be offensive, but I sort of do mock this idea, right, where someone's like, oh, I failed that one class. I'll never take another class. I'm going to drop out of school. Or, I failed in that one dating relationship. I'll never date again. Or I failed in that marriage. I'll never, ever be married. Or I failed at that job. I'm never going to work again. I hate, I'm sort of sound like that, and I don't mean it, again, to be offensive, but what I'm trying to say is it's ludicrous. If you believe you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And I've done other programs on that, and we do it in lots of different settings. Learned helplessness is an idea from an American psychologist who was at the University of Pennsylvania. And I have some show notes in there letting you know how you can go read a little bit more. And wrote a book, Helplessness, in 1975. Martin E.P. Seligman. Okay? Wrote a book about it. Sort of the idea here is the recent academic founder of this idea of learned helplessness. And basically it's talking about conditioning, which is something I talk about in many other programs, as a potential, not the answer, I don't know, but it's a potential answer for why some of the behavior that we witness in ourselves and other people continues to persist. And so this idea of learned helplessness is sort of based on looking at conditioning where you had a situation where animals were trained that if they did a certain behavior or, went to a certain area, that if they did that, they would be shocked by electric shock. So that taught them don't do that, right? At some level, eventually. They would want to avoid the shock, so they'd stop doing the behavior. The thing in that is part of the learned helplessness is that even if you remove the shock, the animals still won't do the behavior, because even though that bad outcome is removed and they're free to just do kind of what they want, they've learned that it's inescapable. They've learned through this repetition of failure, we'll say. I'm just using that term. Of course, it's not appropriate for the dog subject's perspective, but as a human, they start to believe that they cannot do anything differently. They believe they're helpless. And when that happens, people give up. Animals give up. And when you had human subjects, and you didn't use shocks, obviously you couldn't have done that, but they used loud noise, right, to sort of see what would happen. The human subjects and the animal subjects began to have this response where they had an expectation that the outcome was uncontrollable, that there was nothing they could do differently, so they just gave up. They believed they were helpless victims. And at that point, you can become in a mindset where, why bother at work, right? There's nothing I can do. I give up. I quit. Okay, well, that's probably going to lead to some more negative outcomes, right? Why bother to ever go out and meet people? I had that other horrible relationship. All right, but you can see if you do nothing and you give up and you quit, then you're probably going to get more and more angry, perhaps lonely. There may be other outcomes. You see it certainly, as I said, especially with a younger student coming up through an academic program, and they believe they're failures. They think, oh, I failed the test, I failed that class, I'm dumb. I'll never be smart. I'm not going to ever be able to do these things. I'll just quit. What's the point? Now, of course, when you don't have learned helplessness and you look at that and you think, well, that's the silliest thing ever. If you need help with the academic program, everybody struggles with something at some level. Not the same subjects, not the same level of struggle, but nobody magically can do everything at, perfection level. Very few of us ever even attain anything close to perfection, certainly speaking for myself. But certainly myself, when I was in school and I struggled with a subject, I went and asked for the teacher to help me with extra study. I reached out for study groups. If there was tutoring available, I went to tutoring. I mean, I know I'm going to be slower with this. That doesn't mean I can't do it. It just means I might do it slower. It might mean I need to repeat it more and more than other people. I don't care. I don't care if I'm the slowest person. I will figure this out. I'm not going to figure it out at the most elite level immediately, but I'm going to figure out it enough so that it's not going to be an obstacle for me finishing my school or my degree program. That's silly. I'm not going to quit. Again, basically this idea of learned helplessness is that people believe that it's already a foregone conclusion. They believe it's inescapable. What's going to happen? And it's going to be horrible, and they have no control. So they just quit. They give up on themselves. They give up on whatever the endeavor is, and they become often just mired in really poor outcomes, right? You can see if you didn't go forward and achieve the highest level of education or certification that would have given you more opportunity, that might lead to, economic or financial challenges. It might lead to depression or be a factor contributing to depression or sadness. You can see potentially loneliness for somebody who gives up, quote, on people. I've heard that all the time. I've given up on people. I understand you saying you've given up on individual people that you've had a bad outcome with. It didn't go well. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was a former person you trusted. They betrayed your trust. Maybe it's somebody that you were, romantically involved with. I get you saying, I understand and accept it's logical. You don't want to hang out with them anymore. You don't want to trust them anymore. But why would you extrapolate that to every single person on the planet? It doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. If you believe that you're not a helpless victim. One of the things is how people perceive what happens to them. And I talk about these other terms in other programs. So this idea of locus of control, the other idea of, are you somebody who has the ability to impact what outcomes happen in life, right? I mean, that would be an internal locus of control. Or are you somebody who just believes that everything that happens is externally motivated? Is it beyond your control? If you are someone who attributes, right, you look at what happens in life and you say, oh my gosh, I failed a class, let's just say. Because at some level, all of us have been through some level of school, primary school, middle school, high school, something of that nature. If you look at somebody who fails a test, right? I certainly have failed tests. The person who has an internal locus of control will say, what's the reason it happened? They'll say, well, maybe it happened because I didn't study enough and I forgot that the test was on this day and I didn't have breakfast and I didn't sleep well. And so next time I will remember and look at my calendar and study ahead. I will make sure that I've prepared for all of my exams. I'll make sure I get my sleep and make sure that I eat well, and boom, I should do better, right? That's somebody who has an internal motive attribution. They attribute things that happen as something that they have some control over. Whether they studied, how hard they prepared working with a tutor, whether or not they even knew what day the test was, whether or not they, had an adequate amount of sleep, and all these types of things. Somebody who attributes these outcomes, same outcome. The outcome is failed the test, right? Somebody who attributes the exact same outcome to things that are beyond their control, right? They'll say things like, oh, well, it was too hard. That test was too hard. I'm not, quote, good at math, or I'm not good at English, or I'm not good at Spanish, or I'm not, whatever the subject is. It was too hard. I'm not good at that. The I'm not good at that is them making the argument that there's literally nothing they can do. That they're sort of born with a certain amount of intelligence or smarts, I don't know. And they feel like there's only so much of the smart stuff they have inside, and they feel like, hey, I don't have enough smart stuff. It's innate, right? I just don't have this. I can't learn it. What would be the point of a tutor? I already am at this level. There's nothing I can do. A tutor can't help me because I already have this certain level. They really do believe that it's like a set amount that that someone possesses of a trait. And this is weird, too, because you can see how it impacts you in everything. So, like in sports, if somebody who has this attribution theory thinks, oh, I'm just not going to be good. I'm just not good enough. I'm not born athletically talented, right? I'm not fast enough. They'll never think, oh, well, maybe I should work with the coach, or maybe I should see what I can do to improve what I'm doing with the trainer. No, they're just going to say, I don't have it. I can't do it. If you believe that you just literally don't have something, you don't possess that intellect, you don't possess that talent, and you believe that there's nothing that can be done to change that, then that would be a logical thought process. You would think, oh, well, I don't have it and I can't get it, right? So leave it alone. The thing is, though, you can change things. Now, you're not going to take somebody who has severe deficiencies in an area and make them the elite top of the world, right? Somebody who says, oh, I need to be a supermodel, and models are typically, I don't know, somewhere closer to 6 feet, and the person's, 5'1". They may not be the greatest supermodel because they just aren't that tall, and it is difficult, to the best of our ability now, to stretch someone from 5'1" to 6 feet tall and not, I don't know, kill them or physically destroy them, but they could take what the situation is and say, you know what, I'm not tall enough to be a runway model or a fashion model, but maybe I'm tall enough and I can get in shape and work on my body and definition, and I could be a fitness model. And you see a lot of that, where there's different types of modeling, where someone doesn't have to be a certain height. They're not walking a runway in designer fashion, but maybe they're modeling fitness and exercise and things of that nature. So height isn't a part of it at the same level. If you attribute or explain to yourself why stuff happens and you say it's because of something that's beyond your control, right? It was too hard, I'm not that smart, and then this horrible catch-all of luck. I almost hate the word. I use it very rarely, you've noticed, because people will use it for everything, right? Oh, this was unlucky. This is not my lucky day. When I was practicing criminal defense almost full-time, I still was doing other things, but I practiced a lot of criminal defense as a lawyer. That's what I would hear a lot of. Bad luck. Oh, I got bad luck. The police were there. There's bad luck. Well, no, it wasn't that the police were there. It was that the police were there and you were there, with illegal drugs, or illegal weapons. It's not that the police were there that was your problem. It was that my argument would be that you shouldn't have had the possession of the illegal weapons or illegal drugs. That would be my argument. Because the police are the same place as I am. I'm out and about, police are there, but I'm not having a problem with, felony arrests and convictions because I don't have illegal substances. I'm not engaged in illegal behavior. So it's not that the police are there that's the problem. My argument would be. Now, people who believe in, quote, luck, they use it for everything. It's the explanation for everything. I didn't go to work and I yelled at my manager and I was fired. Bad luck. So we have a couple of these And I put a link to an education article that talks about some of these different attribution theories, they call them. It's basically, why you think stuff happens. What do you attribute it to? If you attribute things that are happening to your own individual issues that are in your control, right, your own locus of control, internal, that would be I didn't study well enough for the test, or it's not good luck that the police didn't arrest me and throw me in jail forever. I literally didn't have any criminal contraband on me, and the police weren't criminals who were just going around arresting people who, just for kicks. And so because of that, then part of that was my effort, that I didn't have illegal weapons in my vehicle or on my person. The internal attribution, where you think stuff happens in some measure because of what you're doing, leads to people not thinking they're helpless victims. It makes sense. I don't think I'm a helpless victim if I fail a test, because I think, okay, I'll just study harder, I'll get a tutor, I'll ask teacher for more help. Those are all things that are not making me a helpless victim, because I'm doing stuff, right, to make the situation better or easier. This whole, again, luck, that word, I almost wish we could just banish it, because, again, it's just sort of that way when people shrug their shoulders at me and they say, well, it's just bad luck, what can I do? No, it wasn't. You didn't go to work, you told your manager they were an idiot, you told your spouse that you wish you never married them, and then you're shocked that they walked out on you and filed for divorce. What I'm saying is, this idea that you're just walking around the world, you're, just a super awesome, great person, and nothing that you can do, and that everything that happens is done to you. That's the victim part, right? It's done to me. The learned helplessness is that this is so sad because people can get into a pattern in life if they don't ever have what they would consider a success. And many times in society, in life, people in their family of origin, people in society are told, you're an idiot. You're too dumb, you're not smart enough. People like you, which could be your religion or your ethnicity or anything like that. They'll say, of course you can't do this. The thing is, when people tell you stuff like that, you have to ask yourself, why are they telling me that? Are they a credible source? Or are they someone that wants me to succeed, or they're someone that has a lot of other personal issues, and those personal issues that have nothing to do with me are the reason why they're saying these things to me? You need to think about that. And you need to look around the world and ask yourself, does it make sense that no one could ever improve their grades? If that was true, then why bother to have tests at all? Just take all the, quote, smart people and give them, A's and awards and certificates, and take all the, quote, dumb people, and why bother to send them in school at all? Have you ever seen anybody? Have you ever experienced anything where somebody really studies and takes the time and puts the effort into it, their grades improve? And the answer, of course, is yes. I said toward the beginning of this that I was doing something a little unconventional for our shows, for our MYTH Warriors series, and I laid out at the beginning. This is absolutely positively not a myth. It is the truth. You are not a helpless victim. If you have learned to be helpless because you experience failure, you experience rejection, and now you just automatically assume bad things will happen, you can change that. You can unlearn that. You can learn optimism. You can do the opposite. Instead of learning to be helpless and give up on things, you can learn to be optimistic and understand that you can change things. You're not going to change everything. I used the example earlier, you may still be a prisoner of war. Maybe that part still may turn out horrible. But while you're there, maybe you can do something in that setting to make it a little bit better, a little bit easier, and in some way exert some control over your situation. This is such again, near and dear to my heart, powerful. It's emotional for me to even talk about in some ways, because so many of the outcomes that people experience in life are so destructive. And they destroy themselves, they destroy their families and friends and loved ones, they destroy people who believe in them. All because of this whole thing where they get caught up in their head that they are a victim and they're helpless. And it's just absolutely inaccurate. Are you going to be perfect at everything? No, nobody is. Are there going to be things that you mess up and bad days and things you regret? Of course, everybody has that. Does that define who you are as a person? Of course not. You're making choices. To do nothing and to, quote, give up, I have nothing to lose, is a choice. So don't sit around later and tell everybody else these long sob stories, and I hear them a lot. Right, where people tell me, here's all the reason why. I get it. You have a bad, sad, horrible history. There are many people in life who, again, I talked about this in so many other programs, the pain Olympics, right? Somebody wants to sit and tell me all the reasons why these horrible things happen to them, as if I'm going to sit there and listen to them and think, wow, and say to them, you're the most horribly victimized person in the history of the universe, and all I can do is sit around and feel sorry for you. What can I do to just make your life magically better? It's not accurate. There's always somebody who's got something, quote, worse. These are difficult terms to use. And I'll tell you what, so many people who have had really horrible, disgusting, painful things happen, you wouldn't even know it because they're not focusing on and engaging in learned helplessness. They are not attributing things to luck or their lack of innate ability or something's too hard. You wouldn't even know the horrible things that have happened to a lot of people because they're walking around with that learned optimism. I can do something. I'm not saying I can do everything. I'm not saying I'm magically going to turn a horrible situation into just some great movie outcome. What I am saying is you can do something. And when you go and start talking to me about all the things and the reasons why everything's so horrible, beyond me being emotionally and personally invested in you and giving you some space to vent and to share, when you start repeating it and we're not moving forward, it's not helping anything. Yes, have horrible things happen to many people, including you and I? Sure. Are there other people who would listen to whatever we have to say and laugh at some level and think that's the only thing that happened to you? What about this happened to me? So I've talked about this so much in other programs. I implore you and I beg you to accept that the idea that you are a victim is inaccurate, that you are a helpless victim, that you are a permanent victim is inaccurate, and to really go read and look. You don't have to agree with learned helplessness. You may read the research and data and think this is a bunch of goofiness. I don't believe this at all. Fine, but at least go read it and think about it. And think, have you ever seen people who do this? Who will say something along the lines of, well, I failed that class, or I failed at that marriage, or I failed at that job. I just won't try anymore. And if you have, which I can't imagine there's somebody that has never seen this, then you know how silly that is. On the outside, you look at people like that and you think, well, that's ridiculous. So you're never going to apply for another job? You're never going to go out and try to meet somebody else to spend your personal time with? You're never going to ever try to take another, professional skill or academic program? I mean, really? And it looks silly from the outside because, of course, it's not logical. One test doesn't mean every test. And most of us understand that, hey, I'm not maybe going to be naturally, the biggest genius in the history of the universe in every single subject, but I can at least learn enough of it, and maybe I have to do it slower, maybe I have to do it more repetitively, but I can figure it out to some level and keep moving through my academic program, through my career, and ask for help. So again, I know this is so few people that are part of the program right now, but if you know someone in your life who's engaged in this sort of vicious cycle of victim mentality and helpless victim mindset, try to reach out to them. Work through them, show them resources, talk to them, and help them see that it's not logical and it's so destructive. Of course they can do things. Of course they have the ability to change their life in some ways. There's nothing I honestly can think of more painful than someone who has no belief in themselves. The idea that they can do something, the self-efficacy. And when they give up on themselves and they just say, well, I'll just throw away the rest of my life in the criminal justice system. I'll throw away the rest of my life without completing different academic or professional programs. I'll just give up. And I don't care if they're 18 or 87. It's painful. And it's just heart-wrenching because we all individually have so much capability in our own lives, in the lives of others, in small ways to make a positive impact on the world. So I will never, ever believe that someone has nothing to offer. I'll never believe that someone is a helpless victim. I'll do everything in my power through our resources in our community to try to show people and be there with people and help them work through learning what they're capable of in a healthy, positive way so they begin to see the wonder and the beauty and the opportunity that they have in front of them and be able to change that quality of life so they get them closer to something that's contented or joyful. I'll never give up on that. I really encourage you, again, not to do so, not to give up on that potential and not to give up on people. And I know that if you're a long time part of our programs, there's not even a possibility that you would think these things of yourself. Certainly silliness that you think you're a victim or learned helplessness or a permanent victim or all this kind of silliness. That's absolutely silly. And by that, we mean it's illogical and it gives us bad outcomes. So look at what's out there. I really appreciate you joining me in a little bit extended show today just because I wanted to make sure that I addressed as much as I could in this one short episode. And on closing, get out there. You are not a helpless victim. That is accurate. It is not a myth. It is true. Now, how can I help you meet and surpass your goals? And what can we do as a community to get out there and be a positive impact on the rest of the world, small ways and large ways, in any way, and feel pride in who you are and what you can do. And then let's get out there, and I want you to start experiencing those, quote, success experiences, so you start to learn, look at what I'm capable of. I'm very grateful and appreciative you took the time to join me today. As always, I encourage you to come to CourtneyAnderson.com and share any feedback or ideas. And I also, again, this is in some ways a painful show topic, but I really hope that you took some time to think about it, think about other people in your life, think about how you can be a role model for this. And let's not be caught in some sort of behavior that's not logical, and give up on the wonder and the possibility of what the future has and the present has in store for us. Thank you so much.